Hello and welcome to Country Roads Confidential. No, your eyes and or ears are not deceiving you. You are in the right place. The Country Roads Confidential podcast with myself and Mike will be up in just a second. But before we get there, I wanted to do a quick read to remind you that we are running a 75% off VIP deal over at the site right now. Go to earsports, EERsports.com and sign up right now. Get 75% off. The deal ends at midnight tonight, Monday, Cyber Monday ends at midnight. Sign up now, get 75% off. Coaching search, transfer portal, signing day. West Virginia's roster is going to be completely overhauled. This is going to be the wildest time in West Virginia roster and coaching search in 15 years. So be sure to sign up now. Earsports.com, 75% off. Now, onto the podcast.
Welcome back. Welcome in. It's Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. This is a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaza, joined on the first day after Neil Brown with Chris Anderson. Chris, West Virginia out a head coach, up an interim coach, out recruits fuzzy, gray, murky with other recruits. The roster, we'll see. I think a move today maybe keeps him intact for the bowl game. And then I would assume tomorrow probably have news conference with the athletic director, and then Rem Baker will vanish for an indeterminate period of time until he finds his head coach. And then just to be frank, I have a bachelor party in Las Vegas on December 12th. So if we could wrap this up in a hurry, that'd be great. I can get out for no fee until December 9. Do you think I'm safe, Chris?
If it's anything like last time, 5 days, that was it. No, it's bad, Mike. I don't want 5 days. But well, but to be fair, it was 5 days last time, but there was also the lead up, like a little bit more of a lead up to everybody knew, it was already known that Dana was leaving, that he was kind of waiting till that January 1st date, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there had been a little more kind of movement behind the scenes then than there is now. Not to say that there hasn't been any movement behind the scenes in preparation this time around, but last time there was just more. So I think there was a little bit more of a runway into those 5 days than there is right now. But September 12th, professionally speaking, I hope not, Michael. But we got to have a social life too. So
What if I
I'll
win
wait for you.
roulette big and I give you a portion of the proceeds, though? Would you
Deal.
agree
We'll
to?
make a deal. We'll make a deal on that.
Speaking of timelines, let's go over this because we hit this when West Virginia wasn't like immediately on the market with basketball. Like I forget, like DePaul and Ohio State came open first, and people were really wetting the bed about, oh my gosh, how can they not be interviewing coaches? Why is Josh Eilert still the interim coach? And I mean, that job was on the market ever since they put the extremely large font interim on Eilert's head, right? So for a season, they were out there. I would be, in fact, I'm not even gonna say I'd be stunned. I know that West Virginia has talked around about its job. I just know this. It's come up with people that I talk to when I put together the hot board. They've heard from somebody. They've heard from somebody who's heard from somebody. I know that West Virginia has inquired about what they have with their roster, with people that are, I think, influential in the sport. Hey, what do they need here? What do they have? And I said this before. Some of the feedback is that structurally the offense is good. They have good ideas. Quarterback play could be better. Nice offensive line, good running back, needs some more skill at receiver, that stuff. And their defense was soft, and their defense needed to be fixed, and their defense was an anchor. So that doesn't come from like self-evaluation. That comes from outside sources. And it would be like degenerate behavior by an athletic director if he wasn't talking to agents and search firms during the season. Just normal. And that's normal. That's if you have a coach you like or a coach you don't like. Because if you have a coach you like, 12 other programs may like that coach too. And if you're not thinking, okay, what happens if I get poached? That's no different than what happens if I got to fire my coach. So I don't think West Virginia started the search yesterday or this morning, anything like that. I think it's been going on in some form, in some fashion for quite some time right now. And now you can just be more official with it. You don't have to back channel. You don't have to use a guy. You don't have to send smoke or pigeons or anything like that. You can actually pick up the phone and talk to somebody. That stuff does happen. Like athletic directors talk, agents talk, presidents talk, search firms talk. This stuff happens. And then even if it's not with each other, if an athletic director doesn't talk to an athletic director may talk to an agent who's talked to an athletic director. an agent may talk to an athletic director who's talked to a coach. I think the ball's rolling already here, is what I'm trying to say.
Well,
You're not.
earlier, yeah. Well, over the weekend, I read that quote from an interview that Baker had done with the Athletic Director podcast. And the quote that I read on air was about, his stance on, hey, do I make a coaching change or do I not make a coaching change? Got to evaluate, which way is the best way to invest. But there was another quote in there that I did include, excuse me, that I did include in the story, but I didn't say on the pod because this was not the discussion we were having. But um was talking about, you as far as a replacement coach. He was asked, do you prepare for coaching search, et cetera? He said, you always stay ready. You have to always stay ready. Every year, I ask for our sports program administrator to build a database of candidates as if our job is going to be open. Think whether you are having a real successful year or a real unsuccessful year, you have to live ready for that. There's a healthy exercise in just going through that. And I think it's important to make sure you stay ready. So yeah, I mean, he has a list. He had a list before the decision was made. And apparently, based off that quote, he's always going to have a list. And that's not, unusual. He's not unique in that. I believe it was Shane Lyons. Remember, he was always like, I always got a handful of guys. I always got a handful of guys on a list. So that's not unusual. And West Virginia was ready. And I'm sure, like you said, they were doing some back channeling. And yeah, they could now just kind of pick up the phone, kind of, sort of. They still got to do a search firm to make sure that, their FOIA department doesn't have to bend some rules and ignore your emails and stuff, Mike. But
Like they care, right?
um, yeah, so got to put in that extra loop, spend the extra $1 million just to make sure nothing important gets out.
Yeah. They'll
So
have a search firm. They'll have an internal search committee. Their football administrator is Ben Murray, who's become maybe the number two in the athletic department. He does all the, I forget what his actual title is now, but it's pretty important. But he's their football administrator. So that's like you talked about. Hey, what's your list? They have that. And just think about how they did this last time in basketball. They'll do this, I think, in football too, or a similar exercise. And understand that Baker, I would think, is much more solitary in his basketball search because he more leans toward his basketball knowledge and experience than football. What he'll do is he'll get his committee together. And we could probably name the people. I'm not going to. I mentioned one, but I could tell you who they probably are. But like last time, Baker was pretty clear he did not want to name who it was for fear they wouldn't be able to go to Mass or Kroger or the Coliseum or something like that and get inundated. It's a group of like six people maybe, and they all come forward with a list, but also they get assigned like certain conferences. Like, hey, who from Conference USA? You get the Sun Belt, you get the MAC, and then who would fit? And it could be head coaches, it could be coordinators. So you'll come together at the table here. Baker, probably Murray, I would guess, as the administrator, would have their list. And if one's overlap with, I guess you would call it the master lists. If the submitted lists overlap, well, now you got some. But also, if the submitted lists have a name or two that intrigue, there's nothing wrong with that. If they're separate from the master lists, they get discussed and maybe they get pushed up or pushed out. So it is a process. It will take some time. I would imagine it's going pretty quickly. And if they haven't met, last night perhaps, or maybe early this morning, tomorrow, something like that, it would be behind. So it should get going soon. And I think that's how the process goes. That's how it's gone so far. Maybe the exception was their volleyball coach who kind of just came out of the woodwork at the very end. Jen Greeny, she was suddenly like available and amenable to the change. Exception. But even that, they had a process that was similar to what I explained. So I think you're going to see breakdown in the committee lists. People have assignments and they go and they turn their names in and you kind of go from there. And then I don't think it'll be too long before you start seeing more formative reporting about who's interviewing, who's had a airport meeting with somebody. West Virginia's traveled to a championship game destination, something like that, just so they can get this going. You can do a lot of stuff over the phone and over Zoom, like, tell your team that you're making a coaching change. You could do that with an interview as well.
well, West Virginia might travel to conference championship games, but potential candidates are not skipping their conference championship games to come to Morgantown. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, like if you're holding a clipboard in practice for the next couple of weeks, you have some time, right?
Yeah.
If you're just waiting for a bowl game, that's different. But if you're coaching Saturday in a championship game, all right, one coach may have a checkered past at that. But most of the time you're going to have a obligation to that school and just you're going to want to see it out. Like even if you're thinking about the next school, man, you really want to finish that job that you put a full season in and all the hours and you want to make that work. I don't think you want to be distracted. So anybody they talk to this week has time on their hands, isn't playing for a conference championship or a CFP spot, I would think. That does not mean that like a coordinator for a playoff team can't fit 2 hours in on a Monday, for example. Like today's your slow day in most college football programs. So if West Virginia is expedient and on top of things, they might be able to get some of that work done. Do not freak out if there aren't like rampant reports right away about interviews and imminent hires because everybody's got recruiting going on right now. Not everybody, but a lot of people have conference championship games or playoff spots coming up too. So there is a congestion of competitive elements that make this potentially slower than what you want to see.
Hold on here. Had is not playing in college football playoff, has a lot of time on their hands. Nick Saban, is that how you pronounce it? That looks available. Jimbo Fisher, that's the list. No,
It's
yeah,
the
all
share,
right,
right? Isn't that Cajun? The share?
yeah, that's right. I think it's Jimbo Beaux. Is that how you spell it? I don't know. Look, I'm sorry, I'm making stupid jokes already. We're already here. Um, do we want to talk interim?
Yeah. So
Okay, let's do that because just a few minutes ago, it was reported by Pete Thamel that
friend of the
Chad Scott,
program. Friend of the
yes,
program. Detail.
friend of the program, we should have him on sometime. Yeah, or maybe I'll replace you, or you can replace me with him for a day. Um, says that Chad Scott is going to be named the interim head coach at West Virginia. First thoughts, you and I discussed this privately on the pod, on the board. Um, the reservation might have also been the reason that he's on the interim coach. Was the reservation might have been that he was too popular. He was too popular of a coach. The guys liked him too much. In fear of, because West Virginia wants to start with a clean slate after this. All new coaching staff. They don't want anybody not affiliated with the program, but they're not going to promote anybody from within. And the more I got to thinking about it, and I just put it on the board a few minutes ago, I said, the quote, he really rallied the troops around for the Birmingham Bowl does not quite have that Bill Stewart Fiesta Bowl ring to it. So I don't think that fear, I don't think there should be that fear, is what I'm trying to get at. So picking these super popular coaches probably a good idea because, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, there is the potential for, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago, half of this roster to be gone or more, 50, 60 people from this year's roster gone. And if you can keep the jovial, friendly, extremely popular coach to be the interim coach through the bowl game, that's, another month. Maybe you keep a few more of those guys on the roster around. Maybe you get a few more people to stick around long enough to be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna like this the next hire as well. Because that it's almost like you're biding time here with some of these players because some of these players are going to make rash decisions and just be done and gone and transfer. Some of them are going to be asking a lot of questions like who's the next coach? What's the next step? And if you can get a coach that they really like, that they really want to play for, they want to stick in the program for, and they're going to stick with him for, hey, I'm going to stay with him for a month. That buys you that month to then set up the plan for the future to then pitch to those players, to pitch to those recruits, to pitch to those potential transfers you bring in. So I never thought it was a bad idea to have Chad Scott. I understood the reservations, but this really kind of makes a lot of sense for West Virginia if they're trying to keep the right players in this program and build for the future.
Yeah,
And quite frankly, he and Matt Moore were the most qualified to have this. Like period. Like it
yeah.
wasn't even a question. It was one of those two on
So
that
I have
front.
I have two surprises here. I'm surprised it wasn't Matt Moore, just because he is the associate head coach and he's not calling plays. So what is he doing during the game? He's coaching his position, and Chad Scott and Jeff Coons. I'm assuming Chad Scott will be calling plays, and I'm trying to think of the Jens Danielson. I believe he is the the assistant offensive line coach. Really highly regarded. A bunch of people spoke him up during the preseason. about like the value of having those assistant position coaches, and he was one that came up a bunch. He could serviceably fill in as an in-game offensive line coach if Matt Moore is doing the, are we going for it? Are we punting? Do we call it fake? If he's doing those things, do we call it timeout? That stuff. So you've got your figurehead coach, like no problem there. Associate head coach, he goes up. You got your play callers, Scott and Coons, and you have a very adequate's not the right word, serviceable fill in for Moore. I'm also surprised it wasn't Blaine Stewart, just because like it gives people something to talk about rather than, boy, it sure is pretty here in the Independence Bowl. Like it just and wow, the cloud over the program, the head coaching thing. Like I just thought like that. I wondered if they would do that. Like here's a neat story about a bad story. They would have been totally superficial. It would have been good for the media, but like, what's the guy doing during the game? I don't know. But like Blaine Stewart, that would have been an interesting thing. I didn't think that they were going to do that. I more thought Matt Moore, only because you keep Scott as the play caller, offensive coordinator, and Coons as the play caller, defensive coordinator. I also thought that maybe it wouldn't be Scott for reasons you're mentioning, but like everything you just said completely debunks that. Like rallying everybody to go 7-6 is not the same as 48-28 in the desert against a really good Oklahoma team. It's not. You don't have to worry about that. It's not going to push Chad Scott up at the top. And if people are going to revolt our coaching to get the job we're leaving, probably were anyway, because Chad Scott probably isn't going to be here next year. Sorry, that's the reality. So that's not part of the calculus. I think you're right on with that. What's good though is that it does keep people under the roof for a while. Chad Scott is very, very popular on both sides of the ball. If you saw the video of him getting promoted to offensive coordinator, there was like an explosion in the room because people like that guy. He's energetic, he's motivational, he can talk to different players from different rooms and different sides of the ball. I just think that's the guy that makes everybody feel like this is still one. It's not being splintered, it's not being pulled in different directions. So that's good because interim coaching situations are miserable when you got to play. Whether it's you're 4-6 and you got to finish the regular season, or you're 6-6 and you got to play a bowl game, it's miserable. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's not a fun thing. So anything you can do to change that mood is better. And that certainly is the guy that could do that. Are there others? Maybe. Is there a better one? Not in that room, not in that building.
Next up, recruiting, roster retention, etc. A lot of fallout immediately after, understandably. West Virginia loses multiple commits across multiple classes, several other players on the fence. Again, this should not shock anybody. First off, I think we were directly asked about this in the Q&A just a couple weeks ago and said, hey, how many players decommit if Neil Brown's still head coach and how many players decommit if he gets fired? And I said, maybe one or two if he's kept around. But if he gets fired, it could be half the class. But that is something you understand, you are prepared to deal with. I don't know what percentage of the pie it is as far as your decision making process goes, but it's in there. You know it. Brent Baker is aware of it, not just the recruiting aspect of it, but the roster retention aspect of it, because guys are going to be gone. Again, there's 120 kids on the roster, including walk-ons. The number has to get down to 105 no matter what. So you're cutting 15 right there. 21 seniors are graduating. You're up to 30s. I expect, just even a standard year, you're talking another dozen players transferring. You're in your 40s. We're talking 50s, 60s now, maybe more. I mean, this isn't going to be the hey, Ofri and that's it coming back thing with basketball, but it's going to be worse before it gets better, is what I'm going to tell everybody. There's only what three decommits last night, two for 2025, one for 2026. There will be more. Undoubtedly, there will be more. But that's the cost of doing business if you want to make a change.
You'll see players in the portal before long, too. Um, and you'll see them say things like, I just want to figure out who's going to be the head coach. Just this is the monster they created. That's a business now. You're a free agent. You get a free agency option every year. Go to the portal every year. Like if you like this era, that's what you should do. And if you don't like this era, you probably should get used to it. So with the coaching change, um, I mean that portal's open for you. I mean it's going to be there right now, and who cares when it opens? Like you can put your name in and say you're going to put your name in. Like there's very easy ways to let people know ahead of the open period that you're going to be available. I would think that most of these players have advisors in some regard, a parent, a high school coach, an agent they're going to be told to do it just because. What offers out there, and get your name out there to see who the head coach is. And if the head coach is someone that you like, or someone you're intrigued by, or who's good at your position, or has attracted the NFL for players in the past, come back, right? But you'll see a lot of players going to the portal just because. Again, don't freak out. I mean, you know what? That's wrong. Freak out, right? Losing 80% of your roster, bad, right? Just the prospect of that. But it's not because West Virginia did something wrong. It's just because a team in college football fired its head coach, and this is almost unavoidable at this time.
And for just housekeeping purposes here, the transfer portal for West Virginia is wide open now. It
Yeah,
is
right.
immediate. When you fire a coach, it is immediate. There are no days. It opens for 30 days, which will then coincide with the standard opening for the transfer portal. So West Virginia's players can submit paperwork this morning. We're recording this Monday morning. They can submit paperwork right now. You may not see them in the transfer portal right away. They may announce it on social media or whatnot. Obviously, West Virginia has 48 hours, da 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 da. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen quickly. So, um, yeah, just prepare for it. Know that this churn, if you will, is coming. Like there are going to be a lot of players out. There are going to be a lot of players in. West Virginia may be the new Colorado, the new Dion. He may pull a Dion. What was that first year where he had 70 transfers, including multiple West Virginia players? Was that
Yeah, one retained scholarship player or something like that.
it was something wild. It may not be on that level, but it could be pretty darn close.
Again, panic, right? But that's just what this is now. That's the unfortunate part about having to fire a coach, apart from everything else too. Um, let's talk about timing yesterday. You want to do that?
Sure.
It's about 24 hours after they walk off of the field. Kind of surprised it was that soon. Like I know a lot of people were like, "There's no way." Like I know we talked in the podcast that they would land at 6:30. This could be done by 8:30. I think I was off a little bit there on the time they got back, but probably by an hour or so it turned out. I guess I just didn't think it was going to happen Saturday night. I just figured let's sleep on it. Let's meet in the morning and do that. There were meetings. I would have to assume that Rem Baker went to Neil Brown's house. Like you don't do that at his office. Hey, can you come in into work today? It's your last day, by the way. It's a strange thing. You just kind of give that guy that courtesy, I think. Or they met at like a Panera. I'm not sure, but 4 o'clock team meeting via Zoom. Very
And
2024 of us.
immediately, like the players did not know about the meeting at 3 o'clock. Like it was like a mass text. The team uses like a group messaging app for this kind of stuff. At 3 o'clock, they did not know about the meeting,
About
and the
3:40.
meeting was at 4.
Yeah.
So,
Um. Yeah. That's the weird thing about players too. Like players are gonna want to know answers, and
yeah.
you got to be really careful about giving them answers.
Well,
Uh,
and yeah, that's the other part of it. I'm not
Especially
saying
not in
anything
basketball.
bad about West Virginia being like short notice for the players because they know the moment they tell the players, "Hey, we got a team meeting," out of the 120 players, at least one of them is going to tell somebody something, and it's going to get out sooner than West Virginia would have liked.
I think of the basketball thing where there was that alleged player revolt because they weren't getting information or things like that. Like you got to be really careful with that too. So give them a little bit of notice. Do it on Zoom. That way people don't have to come from. I mean, guys probably went home
Yeah.
Sunday. I'm not sure how many guys are actually in physical classes that are older players, especially. So who knows who was on campus? They do a Zoom. Come in if you want to. Someone will give you the clip notes if you're not there. Um, and then it's done. And then about 20 minutes later, you have the announcement. By then, it's all over the place. People have been able to report it and confirm it. And that was it. Nothing yet from Brown. Nothing yet really formative for the university. It's been Baker's thing every time the job has opened up under him that they've had. I mean, this is volleyball to men's basketball. They've had a press conference about what he's going to do and how he's going to operate. I would assume we don't have that today. I would assume tomorrow. Chris, maybe Wednesday is best because they were going to have one for signing day. I don't know how you do that now. Like, is Chad Scott going to get up there and do a news conference on signing day? I hope for his sake not. That'd be a really rough spot for him. Um, Might be pretty brief too. But yeah, I would say Tuesday or Wednesday. But what did you think about 24 hours where a football scoop, extremely reputable, okay? They said Sunday morning, somewhere in the next 36 hours. They're not wrong, but it was about 8 hours, right? So yeah, inside of 36, but there's two ways to look at this. It was quick on that clock. It was slower by the what are we doing? Just fire this guy clock.
No, I think that all comes down to what the decision was. Like how far in advance was this decision made? All that stuff. I mean, I can't imagine. I think the part where fans got upset was two parts. One, are they still actually actively debating this on Sunday? Don't know if that was the case. Two, yeah, two, um, were the fact that a few other teams on Sunday had already made decisions or decisions that had already been made by the coaches for their futures, including UCF and Purdue, two schools where I think people believe those to be in the same pond as West Virginia. But in that, because I want to ask you about that. And so again, just right back to the basketball thing. Once once teams started opening up and they're like, oh, why is West Virginia not interviewing? And you noted like, hey, West Virginia was treating it as it was open forever. Um, Once those start opening up and guys start getting interviews with those schools, it's what is West Virginia doing? They're going to get into the race late, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Mike, are UCF and Purdue is that the same pool? I'm going to say, and people listening may not like this, UNC is not in the same pool. UNC is for those not sorry audio people, that was me going rungs up the ladder, was that little clicking sound. Um, is up a couple rungs on the ladder. UCF Purdue, it sounds like they shouldn't be in West Virginia's pool, but Purdue has Big Ten money. UCF has Florida and is in the same conference. They have money. They have an extremely large alumni base. Um, they're in the same pool, yes or no?
How big is the pool? Are we talking like Olympic size? Are we talking like I'm trying to think of what's a bigger pool.
Let's set this pool tier of like 20 teams. Are they in the same like 20 team bracket as
Yeah,
West
yeah.
Virginia? Out of
They're
100, out of 134 teams, is West Virginia, UCF, and Purdue in the same kind of 20?
so like West Virginia could be 60, UCF could be 52, Purdue could be 68, something like that. I get what you're saying there. So like a
Yeah,
plus or minus 20. Yeah,
right,
I think
right. Yeah.
you could draw a circle around that. So people are going to tell you that UCF's a better gig right now. Florida, you're in the Big 12. If you think about what West Virginia has to work against, okay, they don't necessarily have to do that when it comes to geography. Fair. What West Virginia has going for it. And I would argue that West Virginia is a better job right now than when Neil Brown took over in 2019. Just situated more comfortable with the Big 12 now, has better stuff, has finished projects. The money situation is more universal than it's unique to West Virginia. They don't have to just it's they're not alone in the Big 12 though because of UCF and Cincinnati, which is my point. UCF does not have the stuff that West Virginia struggled with, had to fight and overcome and get to this spot. UCF's in the same league, and UCF gets money from campus because it had to do that for a while to supplement not having a huge check from the conference. Um, West Virginia's again gonna have to get money from campus to make this coaching transition and or revenue sharing work. So that's I just think that if you're a coach right now and you could pick the two, you're probably pretty close on West Virginia UCF. It might just depend where you're from. Where do you want to recruit from? Like a guy who's from Southern Ohio might favor West Virginia. A guy who's from Orlando is going to favor UCF. Piece of cake. Purdue's an interesting one because that kind of parallels West Virginia maybe historically on some stuff. I'm not going to get into what tradition is better, but it's in the Big Ten. It's a Big Ten job, so I think people are going to think that lifts it up better. And it not that long ago, it was pretty good. I don't know what happened with Ryan Walters and why they decided to hire him based off of a good a good little run at Illinois, but that didn't look like it was a good pick at all. Whiffed on a bunch of coordinator hires. Realistically, in the moment, that's probably the number three job, but it probably gets lifted up because it's in the Big Ten. Now, the other part about that is I'm not sure you would put it over West Virginia and UCF because of the Big Ten job, because when is Purdue winning the Big Ten? When is West Virginia or UCF winning the Big 12? I think if you're betting, you would bet on one of those two to win the Big 12 way before Purdue to win the Big 10. So it's a really interesting question because if you stack variables up and you look and you just pros and cons for each job, it's pretty even, I would think, in some regard. It's not a note for note the Big Ten thing is unique for that separates Purdue. The money's great. What are they doing with it? What are they doing? Are they going to get the CFP? It's going to take something unique to do that. West Virginia was West Virginia tripped and fell this year into being in the running for a Big 12 championship spot at the very last week of the season. Like we laugh about that. It was a running joke. Much easier to get to the playoff in the Big 12
Well, don't
than
don't
the Big
run it
10.
off like a running joke, Mike. You know that's your dream. You had it.
I
All the
did
math
dream.
figured out.
I did dream. Just me atop the mountain doing
There you
I
go.
told you my tablet. So yeah, I mean you could really argue that another way. I would think that Purdue at the moment right now for a head coach would probably be number two. I don't know what's number one though. That's the weird part. It really depends on who you give that to. I think the Big 12 thing is an important factor for access to the playoff and fame and fortune for the head coach. It's harder at Purdue for sure, but Purdue is a Big 10 job.
All right. We might need to get ready to wrap this up here soon, but seriously, you joked about it earlier. Timeline, your thoughts. Give me an over under. Are you going to be done by the time your bachelor party starts, or is
Um,
this going to go into week before Christmas time?
I said comfortably by Christmas. I think that's probably accurate. I just don't know how you get anything done this week with so many championship games that are going on. And you're talking to coordinators, whatever, but they're going to want to say, listen, I'd love to talk to you. Can we do it Monday? Can we do it Tuesday? I just think that next week is the real rubber in the road. And I'm on a flight Thursday, so that's not going to work, right? So I think I'm probably canceling my trip. But I still think comfortably by Christmas. I think you could be done. I think we could be having a rapid reaction podcast, Chris, by what if we did it like over under 14 and a half days from now, over under the 17th? I think we
Uh,
could be having one like right around then.
Okay, that's a fair amount of time. I'm hoping under as well
Oh,
on that.
believe me.
Yeah, I know you are, but 14 feels like a long time. Maybe I'll have to go back and look and see how long traditionally these end of the year coaching changes last because I know I don't want to say jealous, might have been jealous of Tennessee back when they had like three coaching changes in 6 years on our
Three in
Tennessee
a year,
site.
didn't they?
Yeah, and it was like one of them was the
Shiano and then Britain.
yeah, but one of them was like the coach got fired in like October, and then the coaching search lasted like 3 months. I was like, man, what a dream! What a dream in this business to have a 3 month long coaching search. But no, well,
Stuff on that one.
um, I don't know. Final thoughts on Neil Brown. Then let's end on that. Your final thoughts. I kind of sprung that on you. We didn't talk about that pre-game here, but you got any final thoughts on him, his time here, anything like that? Because I know the fans are itching for a AMA on our behind the scene. People are like, hey, what's the behind the scenes story on all this stuff? So I know that's already getting started.
Sometime after dark,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I don't have anything that's unique or different from what people have said about how if you built the candidate profile, he had that. Nothing wrong with that. And then his shortcoming was he didn't win enough. He did the right things except the best thing. No problem there. I think we look back and we realize that I don't know that it was as hard as it seemed. And I think a lot of people were just like, boy, West Virginia's tough job. Gotta cut him some slack. I don't know that I can look back and say that. And I didn't say that in the moment. Um, and my thing now is that I really think that West Virginia has its mind wrapped around this could be a quick reset. Not like, hey, let's go right to the CFP title game like Sonny Dykes. I don't think that they're staring at a 2-10 season. Like I think it could be really hard, but the optimism is that this job is in a good spot. Like I said, I think it's better than it was in 2019. And somebody can walk in. Is it turnkey? No. I think he put it in a good spot and kept it in a good spot and did some things. I just don't know how he didn't do more with it. And if you look at the record and some of the everything that people have compiled against him, the fact that there is such a wealth of evidence that he could not narrow the margins and get over the top, that's what did him in. And was he close? Yeah. Should he have been close? At some point, probably no. And it's just one of those things where you get so used to this of being like right on the edge and they never got anything out of it. Like pressure makes diamonds, Chris. Like he was under pressure a bunch and just never really turned into that diamond. And at some point you go, you know what? Squeeze all you want, and you're just not going to get any more juice out of it, and you go. So got it to where he probably wanted to launch it, and just never was able to launch it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Again, I think there seems to be a near consensus about people's thoughts on Neil Brown, his time at West Virginia, how he is as a person, how he is as a coach. I don't, again, yeah, I think you put it best there. Like he didn't do the most important thing, which was winning. I think, and sometimes with coaching, it's not your actual coaching of the game that's the problem. And I know we've talked sometimes about like, so, stepping on the rake, making mistakes before halftime, doing different things. But I think ultimately he's a pretty good football coach. And I think, a good game planner. I know I upset some people on the board when I pointed to, hey, look at how much success he has on some of these scripted plays. So he obviously knows something about the game of football. But I think he messed up in a lot of other areas that ultimately cost him his job, ultimately kept him from winning. I think some of the, player retention, player acquisition, that struggled. Early in his career, I wrote several stories about look at all these teal chip recruits that created that term. Talk about the new influx of talent, high school talent that they were bringing in. That's you haven't seen that story in a while. You want to know why? It's steadily declined over the last few years. And even if I know that's part of that's because of like transfer, the focus on transfers, but even that was not where it needed to be to kind of keep the talent up there. And again, some of the assistant coaching moves, whether it was the right hire, wrong hire, we could debate a lot of that all day long. But I think really the offense struggled for several years, and in part because of the indecision about what was going on offense. Who was calling plays? I mean, there was multiple years in a row where the play caller changed every single year, sometimes multiple times during the year. There was one year where we tried to ask, who the heck is calling plays? Who the heck is the offensive coordinator? And the answer was never an answer. And like I know Mike finds that funny because I think you might have been the one to being like, seriously, who's calling the plays right now? And
Money is
just
not the
couldn't it just a very direct question, couldn't get an answer. And ultimately it was those kind of I'm about to say off field is not right because that is on field stuff, but ultimately it was those kind of decisions, and again the player retention and acquisition that cost him, not necessarily his actual understanding of the game. So, yeah, I liked your quote. He did a lot of things right except the most important thing, which was win, and this is why we are where we are.
Chris, they had multiple offensive coordinators within a drive. Remember, they got to the red zone and they changed their play
Yes.
callers. I think at some time Neil will stand back and be honest with himself and say it was not as hard as I sometimes made it out to be, whether it's that or the schedule or anything like that. And your point about teal chip, Chris, I think we could say that if Neil Brown had a teal chip program, that would be accurate. The teal chip recruits never really became in mass blue chip recruits.
Yeah.
And what's a teal chip opponent? Those fringe top 25, like 35 to 15. What's his record against them? Lousy. Never mind top 25. Teams with winning records like I don't think he beat like an 8-win team, right? It was something crazy like that. So those 5 and 6 and 7 win teams, like did he do enough there to beat those teams? No, he lost a number of those games, which sunk his record closer and closer to 500. So teal chip is a really interesting way to put this in a lens to look through. Like he had teal chip stuff that he never turned into blue chip, whether it's talent, opponents, opportunities. I mean, he had blue chip opportunities too. But if you're asking Neil Brown or West Virginia to make a living, beating Oklahoma and Texas and Penn State, that's fine. If you're asking West Virginia to make hay in the non-conference against Maryland, Pitt, Missouri, that is much easier. That's teal. That's harder to do? No way. You're asking West Virginia to win a Big 12 that has Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State. Like those are the teams. That's a lot easier. That's a teal chip opportunity, and it never turned blue.
Well, Mike, let's wrap it up. We're going to hop off here, get back to work. I got to get on a scholarship tracker because things are going to get weird for sure here, ins and outs and everything in between. Good news, tweet just came through. 2025 quarterback commit Scotty Fox confirms that he will indeed sign his national letter of intent with West Virginia on Wednesday. He had told me Sunday night, "Hey, I'm committed. I'm going to get more information in the morning." Well, I guess whatever he heard this morning, because again, it's 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday. Whatever he heard this morning, he liked, because now he says that he is going to sign his letter of intent after last night tweeting his recruitment was still open. So again, everything's going to be fluid. That was like three different answers from one player in the span of about 12 hours. And I'm not blaming the player. It's just a weird, crazy time. Like, and it's going to be hard for a lot of these kids to make decisions. So be prepared for a lot of back and forth here.
No offense to Scotty Fox, but I wonder if his high school was like, can you just sign me because we got this party plan? We bought all these balloons and streamers. We have a cake. Like, can you just sign me because Chris, the NIL is worthless or the
No,
NLI is worthless. Like they're getting rid of it anyways.
the NIL is not worthless.
The NLI, yeah. They're getting rid of it. Schools, if he wants out of his NLI in a couple of weeks, they'll let him go. I
Yeah.
understand. It's a great thing for him to do. And if he's serious about it, listen, I apologize. Like if he's the quarterback, hey, that's me. But I think in a general sense, you can look at that and go, so I mean he could just easily get out of it too. It's what it is. You want to do live text time, Chris? Very popular.
Oh God. Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
10:05. It's like a funeral in there today. Nobody's talking or anything. It's miserable. It's a miserable thing when there's a coaching change. Players wear it, coaches wear it. They know they're not guaranteed anything tomorrow by anybody who they can even identify right now. And you got to go and play a game for who, for what? It's hard. So yeah, like I get it. They have great luxuries and things that a lot of others want that are in college or on their way to college, whatever, or in the profession or who are working a 9 to 5. I get all that. It's still hard though. Just difficult.
Um,
Yep. Go yeah.
sorry, one more thing, and we're gonna go back and add a piece of this also on the front of the podcast. 75% off VIP. Do not miss out on it. It ends at midnight tonight. Done at midnight. Okay, maybe you still get some kind of deal after this, but the 75% off, insane, ridiculous deal ends at midnight tonight. Um, literal hundreds of people signed up in one day. Uh, don't miss out. Don't be the WVU fan that's missing out on this because again, we just talked about it. Coaching search, transfer portal, signing day, all of this is going to be the craziest it's been at WVU since, I mean, since your book. Like, and even then, the transfer portal and stuff wasn't even open. So, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm,
that's just
I'm trying to get a plug. Maybe we'll find that Amazon link and put it at the bottom of this YouTube video for you, Mike.
I did not forget to promote the 75% off because I'm not promoting it, Chris. I'm not going to do it. I don't like it. I don't like writing for pennies. I don't like killing myself to get inside information from the highest of the highs of the university and give it away for free. I didn't
Yeah,
forget. You remembered. And like, you know what? When you put that in the front, it might not make it. I might accidentally cut it. That's
yeah.
how much I don't like this offer. I don't like it. It's that good. It's that bad. So I didn't forget. Good for you. We'll see if it makes it to the cutting room floor because I had the final edit, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, we'll see if it makes it. Until then, I'm Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you then.